Hi folks, this is a front camera comparison between the Galaxy A52 and the Redmi Note 10 Pro. Now on the A52 we have the 1080p at 60 frames per second and 4K at 30 frames per second for the front camera, but unfortunately the same option does not appear on the Redmi Note 10 Pro. Redmi Note 10 Pro's front camera is limited to 1080p at 30 frames per second. I am working to give you guys an idea about the stability, and you guys can already get an idea about the colors, the highlights, dynamic range and all other aspects for the front camera. Also you will get an idea about the mic's voice recording quality through this video. Now this is the full comparison between these phones, so make sure you watch it until the end. And if you guys find this video good enough at some point, do hit the like button and make sure to subscribe to my channel. After this I will take you through the camera hardware of these phones, and then we will take a look at the camera applications and then continue with the rear camera samples first of all, and slowly move towards other parts of this full comparison between the Redmi Note 10 Pro and the Galaxy A52. Let's get the camera hardware out of the way first. A52's main camera is a 64 megapixel sensor with optical image stabilization. Other camera sensor details are on your screen. Redmi Note 10 Pro's main camera sensor is a 108 megapixel sensor with electronic image stabilization only, and rest of its details are on your screen once again. Camera apps on both phones differ a lot. Both phones have their own unique features in the camera apps, but let me tell you about the main and realistic differences. The A52 can do 60 frames per second videos from its front camera. Note 10 Pro can't do that. A52 can also do ultra-wide videos in 4K at 30 frames per second mode. The Note 10 Pro cannot do that either. A52 can also take ultra-wide night mode images. Note 10 Pro can't do that. Note 10 Pro can record super macro videos. A52 can't do that. The Pro mode of the Redmi Note 10 Pro has RAW mode. A52 lacks that. Redmi Note 10 Pro's Pro mode is much more powerful than the A52's Pro mode. Both phones otherwise have a lot of other flashy camera features setting them apart. Let's go ahead and take a look at the images. Starting off with the rear camera images of my nieces, both phones have a very good picture. The shadows appear darker on the Redmi Note 10 Pro. There is a difference of angle in both the images. To me, the details seem a bit better on the Redmi Note 10 Pro in this image. Both phones have kept the colors quite well, but the whites look more realistic and more detailed on the Redmi Note 10 Pro here in this particular image. There is a warm look on the image of the A52. The skin tone is a bit warm, while it is quite soft and cool on the Redmi Note 10 Pro. Again, the A52's image is warm and the Redmi Note 10 Pro's image has a cool tone. Edge detection on the A52 is better, details are also better on the A52. Redmi Note 10 Pro has wiped off a lot of edges. A very good image on both sides overall. It depends on your color taste now. This one is another broad daylight image, and here you can see that the A52 clearly takes the lead. The highlights and dynamic range on the A52 is much better. Redmi Note 10 Pro has made the subject quite dark and compromises on the details. In this image, look at the colors closely. How the Redmi Note 10 Pro has blown them off, while the grains are all visible on the A52. This is just another example of how the A52 retains the details once again, while the Redmi Note 10 Pro has a polished image. The colors are deep on the Redmi Note 10 Pro and a bit bright on the A52. Check the depth effect, and once again the colors are deep on the Redmi Note 10 Pro and the depth effect looks good on the Galaxy A52. Here once again there is a difference of the colors. The depth effect on both the sides also speaks for itself. In the normal rear camera images, I found both the phones going neck and neck. The color accuracy completely depends on your choice too. The colors appear very deep on the Redmi Note 10 Pro. There is a color boost in the images of this phone, while the A52's colors are quite close to reality. And this is what we also saw in the A52 versus the A72 comparison. I like the images coming out of both the phones, since I am a fan of more natural colors, well managed dynamic range, shadows and highlights. I am a bit inclined towards the Galaxy A52, but that is not to say that the Redmi Note 10 Pro's main rear camera images are bad. They are actually quite good, and there is a huge audience that likes that color boost in the images. I just wish this phone had a better highlight and shadow management too. Colors are not a problem, but sometimes the blown off highlights can be problematic. I shot a lot of colorful images to prove my point, and you guys can find it out in all these images. Keep your eyes on the background too. The color of the sky also keeps changing in every scene. Let me show you a series of high-res, normal and the ultra-wide images now. Redmi Note 10 Pro has a greenish tint in all of its high-res images. No problem with the details, but the A52 captures better and good colors in its 64 megapixels mode as compared to the 108 megapixels mode of the Note 10 Pro. In the normal camera mode, the Redmi Note 10 Pro maintains a cool tone, while the A52 has a warm tone. And when we switch to the ultra wide mode, the A52 takes the clear lead because its color tone remains consistent, while the Redmi Note 10 Pro's ultra wide color tone does not match its own main camera and high-res mode. This is an observation that I had in all such image pairs. You can look at the grass too. Note down the shadows and details. You will find them better on the A52 in most of the cases. In the ultra wide mode, the Redmi Note 10 Pro fails to brighten the image, and this could be a big drawback of this phone because even when the light is ample, this phone's ultra wide camera can disappoint you. So my theory is that the Redmi Note 10 Pro's main camera in the 12 megapixels mode works the best. Its high-res mode needs a lot of optimization, and its ultra-wide camera also needs upgrades. While on the other hand, the A52 works fine in all of its modes. Redmi Note 10 Pro can capture better details at times thanks to its bigger sensor, but if we talk about the overall color tone and the consistency of the color tone through all the camera modes, my pick is going to be the Galaxy A52. You can disagree with me and drop your own analysis in the comments below. I tried my best to not to sound biased, but the images here speak for themselves. Also, I would like to tell you that I bought both the phones from my own pocket, and this is the most in-depth analysis of these cameras that I could come up with. In my own images, the color tone is better on the Galaxy A52 once again. A52's images are well saturated. You can see the differences clearly here. My face looks much better on the Galaxy A52, and the differences once again are exactly what I just explained a while ago. The ultra-wide image on the Redmi Note 10 Pro is once again too dark and dull. The high-res image again has a greenish look on the Redmi Note 10 Pro. In the portrait mode, look at my shirt on the Redmi Note 10 Pro. I am not sure why the Note 10 Pro has that slightly warm effect towards the bottom left of my shirt, while it is completely fine on the Galaxy A52. In the macro camera images, the Redmi Note 10 Pro clearly wins. Redmi's macro camera mode takes crispy, clear and detailed images. The A52 doesn't even let you get that close to the subject, so this is one useful sensor in this phone only if you like taking those macro images. In the night mode, both phones capture average images. The light keeps changing. At some instances, the A52 takes better images, and sometimes the Redmi Note 10 Pro takes better images with high details. A52's night mode works for its ultra-wide mode too, while the Redmi Note 10 Pro's ultra-wide camera cannot capture night mode images, just like I told you in the start of this comparison. Overall, I think the A52's night mode images are much better, but let me know what do you guys think. And finally, the selfies. Check the background. The background is fully blown off in the selfie of the Redmi Note 10 Pro. background is all good on the A52. Redmi Note 10 Pro has my face super bright. The A52 is trying to maintain my face along with the background. Details and skin tone on the A52 is superior. Redmi Note 10 Pro's selfie is super soft. The same can be seen in the portrait selfies too. As usual, I would like to say that the selfie tone is a subjective choice. It's not necessary that you also like what I like, so you can choose the one that appeals you and let me know in the comments which phone's selfies do you like more out of these two. And with this we approach the videos. First, let me tell you what sets these cameras apart. Both phones can capture 4K at 30 fps videos from the rear camera, but the Redmi Note 10 Pro cannot capture 4K 30 fps videos from its ultra-wide camera. A52 has optical image stabilization, the Redmi Note 10 Pro has electronic image stabilization. Both have 60 fps video recording mode too. The A52's EIS works in 4K 30 fps and 60 fps modes, and its OIS works in 1080p at 30 fps mode. On the other hand, the Redmi Note 10 Pro's EIS works only in the 1080p at 30 fps mode. Based on these facts, you can be the judge and decide which phone has better video capabilities while the video result is already on your screen. These were all handheld videos, and I am sure by this time you have a clear idea about these cameras and you are in a decision making position as well, and I will also give you my final camera conclusion at the end of this video. I conducted a small throttle test followed by a realistic speed test. Both phones were using the same Wi-Fi, Bluetooth was turned on, brightness was full, and all the settings were the same, and both phones are running on the latest Android 11. I started off with the Antutu throttle test. I will run 3 Antutu cycles in total, and keep in mind that during this test the Antutu scores will drastically drop on both sides because this is an extremely stressful test and phones will be going through tough conditions. The first Antutu cycle came to an end, and at the end of this test the Antutu scores are on your screen. The A52 beats the Redmi Note 10 Pro. Temperature on the Redmi Note 10 Pro has hit 40 degrees in the very first cycle. Battery on the Redmi Note 10 Pro has dropped down to 97% at this point. On the other hand, the A52's temperature is at 38 degrees. Battery is at 100%, and the CPU temperature on the A52 is 36 degrees, and it's 46 degrees on the Redmi Note 10 Pro. Remember that the A52 is using the Snapdragon 720G according to Samsung. There is still a confusion, but I am just going to say that it's a 720G, and the Redmi Note 10 Pro is using the Snapdragon 732G. After the second Antutu cycle, the Redmi Note 10 Pro's temperature has gone up to 42 degrees. This is getting quite hot now. The battery on this phone has dropped to 94. On the other hand, the A52's temperature is at 39 degrees and its battery is at 98. CPU temperature of the A52 is 38 and Redmi Note 10 Pro is at 46 again.
You got me down again.
After the third cycle, the battery on the Redmi Note 10 Pro is down to 91. Its temperature has hit 43 degrees. This is just not good. A52's temperature has now hit 41 degrees and its battery is at 95. The CPU temperature of A52 is at 43 now, and it's 48 on the Redmi Note 10 Pro. At this point, I launched the Geekbench 5 test on both the phones. I will do 2 cycles of the Geekbench test. The first Geekbench cycle ended, and at this point it has been proved that the temperature management, battery percentage and the overall CPU performance of the Redmi Note 10 Pro is not up to the mark. I am using the 8GB variants of both the phones, and the test conditions on both the sides are also the same. The 120Hz refresh rate might be contributing to more battery consumption and also causing the phone's temperature to go up, but if we continue doing this for a while, the Redmi Note 10 Pro will become untouchable. The A52 is also slowly crossing the safe temperature limits now. After the second Geekbench test, the scores are on your screen once again, and you can also see the temperatures, and the Redmi Note 10 Pro is doing what it just does, heating up and dropping more battery. At the end of this throttle test, I decided to run the 3D Mark gaming benchmark. The wildlife stress test will run for about 20 minutes. This is an extremely stressful test, and the scores will tell us more about the battery and the performance of these phones. And here you go with the scores, the battery that dropped during this test, and also the frame rate of the phones. Take a close look at these stats. In terms of performance, the Galaxy A52 is a superior device by all the means. This little speed test that I am going to conduct now will also give you a better idea about the performance.
You got me down again.
Okay, so for the photo editing in the Lightroom and in the Snapseed application, I found the Galaxy A52 faster. The Redmi Note 10 Pro performed better for video editing in both the Premiere Rush and the Viva video applications, but the A52 was not that far behind. Overall, it was a very tough and close call. In the design and build department, the Redmi Note 10 Pro is the clear winner. It is built out of glass, it has a premium look and feel, and it's also very slim. The A52 is built out of plastic. Despite being a plastic phone, its weight isn't that less, and it's not very slim either. But yes, the design of the A52 is quite good, and I am a huge fan of its soft matte finish. A52 is water resistant with IP67 certification, while the Redmi Note 10 Pro might just be a splash proof smartphone. Both phones come with a headphone jack, and both have a dual stereo speaker too, and the speaker performance of both the phones is quite similar. Redmi Note 10 Pro's one speaker is placed underneath and one is placed on the top of the top frame. On the other hand, the A52's second speaker is placed above the screen. The speaker setup of the A52 is more practical, as you won't end up covering one of its speakers while playing the games. Redmi Note 10 Pro has a bigger battery, but you saw its battery performance during my 1-hour stress test. So the A52, despite having a smaller battery, has a better battery consumption thanks to its 90Hz refresh rate. The Redmi Note 10 Pro brings a 33W charger out of the box. A52 brings a 15W charger out of the box, but it supports 25W charger too. This time around, Redmi has added a Super AMOLED display to its mid-range lineup, and this is a significant upgrade. Redmi has basically brought their phones neck and neck with the Samsung, and the competition has got a whole lot interesting now. The Redmi Note 10 Pro offers a 6.67 inches AMOLED screen with peak brightness of 1250 nits, and it has a better screen to body ratio too. This is a 120Hz panel. On the other hand, the A52 offers a Super AMOLED screen of 6.5 inches. To me, the A52's bezels seem a bit chunkier, but do tell me if you think the bezels on both the phones are the same. A52's peak brightness is 800 nits and its refresh rate is 90Hz. So on paper, the Redmi Note 10 Pro's screen is brighter, and that 120Hz refresh rate is definitely much more fluid. Touch responsiveness of both the phones is quite good. The color accuracy is also quite good on both the sides. you are going to enjoy the display on both the phones in any case. Using these displays outdoor is not going to be a problem either. The A52 also has an under-display fingerprint scanner, while the Redmi Note 10 Pro has a side-mounted scanner. Scanner of the Redmi Note 10 Pro is too fast because it's a side-mounted optical reader, but if you are a fan of more modern fingerprint scanners, the A52 is going to attract you. Redmi Note 10 Pro offers a SIM card slot with space for 2 SIM cards and a microSD card. The A52 offers a hybrid slot which can hold either 2 SIM cards or 1 microSD card and 1 SIM card at the same time. And with this we reach the most interesting point of our comparison, the price. I bought the Galaxy A52 with 8GB of RAM and 128GB of storage for about $360 and the Redmi Note 10 Pro with 8GB of RAM and 128GB of storage for about $305. In a number of countries, the price gap between these particular variants is going to be the same. So for that extra money on the Galaxy A52, I get a phone with better cameras, better video recording capabilities, up to 3 years of software updates, and up to 4 years of security updates. Very good performance, very good temperature management, great battery consumption, and a good looking design. And if I pay about $55 less, I get a phone with better build and design, great display, good refresh rate, but I compromise on the performance, the temperature management, the cameras, and the battery performance as well. So the question is, would you like to pay 55 or 60 extra US dollars and compromise on just the build of the phone, or would you like to pay less and compromise on performance, battery, and cameras? The decision is yours to make, and I would like to hear you out. Drop your own analysis and feedback in the comments below. Hit the like button if you found this video useful. Also, subscribe if you have not yet. With that being said, I will sign off and see you all in the next one.